समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
One approach to understanding how Indian nationalism or patriotism has evolved over the past 6 decades is by looking at how cinema and especially Bollywood has defined it in different eras. We say 6 decades simply because the first decade after independence, nationalism was still defined by the freedom struggle. That said, the passing away of Bharat Manoj Kumar, who was born Hare Krishna Giri Goswami on 24th of July 1937. His passing at 87 now gives us the moment to reflect. He, that is Manoj Kumar, Bharat Manoj Kumar, more than any other actor, defined patriotism, nationalism, good citizenship, lawful living, and a virtuous lifestyle. Playing diverse characters under his chosen name of Bharat, he portrayed the perfect Indian, the ideal Indian. That was 3 decades before Kamal Hassan, playing a similar character, Hindustani in 1996, gave us a more contemporary portrayal of the same ideal Indian, one who would even stick a scimitar or more like a harakiri sword into the belly of his own anti-national son. This isn't an obituary of Manoj Kumar. I simply haven't seen enough of his movies, particularly after Roti Kapda Aur Makan in 1974, to be writing an obituary, and I did not know him. So I will not do that. This is not an obituary of Manoj Kumar. It is about the influence he had in defining patriotism for 2 generations of Indians across our most perilous decade. Say, from 1962, the war with China, until the run up to the emergency. That is, ending up in 1974, the emergency was mid 1975. He did so by playing diverse, all sacrificing, heroic, and ultimately victorious characters as Bharat, an ordinary soldier and a Haryana farmer's son in Upkar 1967, a betrayed and assassinated freedom fighter's brilliant son in Purab aur Paschim 1969, and an unemployed engineer with a degree in Roti Kapda aur Makan, we'll call it RKM for short, in 1974. Each of these reflected the theme of the fast changing India from the early Indira era until the emergency broke this momentum and brought the angry young man in its wake. That mantle, as we know, was picked up by Amitabh Bachchan. He was the angry young man. Manoj Kumar played Bhagat Singh in the 1965 version of Bhagat Singh's biopic. That was called Shaheed. That film was called Shaheed. In 1965, Manoj Kumar played Bhagat Singh. It was a hit and brought him enormous notice, much more notice than he had already got from playing the romantic lead in many films, including a film like, say, Haryali of Rasta. Many of you might remember the song Ibtadae Ishq Mein Hum Sari Raat Jage, Allah Jane Kya Hoga, Maula Jane Kya Hoga with Malasina and more like that. But he got a lot more attention now because of the way he played the role of Bhagat Singh in Shaheed. So enormous was the notice that he got because of this film, because of Shaheed. That story goes that Manoj Kumar met Lal Bahadur Shastri, then Prime Minister, who had just seen Shaheed. Why don't you make a film on the theme of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan? Shastri asked. This must have been sometime in late 1965. The result in double quick time was Upkar in 1967. So I can say that this was delivered within 2 years of Shastri's exhortation to Manoj Kumar to make a film on the theme of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. It was shot in the villages of outer western Delhi and parts of Haryana as well. Bharat of Upkar was a humble farmer, Kisan, who fights in the 1965 war as an ordinary soldier, Jawan. You will find posters of this Bharat in dhoti kurta, carrying a plow, as well as in the army uniform with a rifle, war paint, and blood. Songs that became hits across generations are too many to list. Kasme waade pyar wafa sab बातें हैं बातों का क्या वगैरह वगैरह etc etc. But we specially need to mention just one. मेरे देश की धरती सोना उगले उगले हीरे मोती, right? The land of my country disgorges gold, diamonds, pearls, right? And then it goes on listing our national heroes. ये बाग है गौतम नानक का, खिलते हैं चमन के फूल यहाँ, गांधी सुभाष टैगोर तिलक ऐसे हैं, वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. Counts all the heroes, comes right up to Shastri. रंग हरा हरी सिंह नलवे से, रंग लाल है लाल बहादुर से, like that. And the crowds in cinema halls cheered with every line. How enduring are these lines from Gulshan Babra, who was the lyricist? Delhi High Court Judge Pratibha Singh used lines from Mere Desh Ki Dharti in her bail order for JNU activist Kanhaiya Kumar. Of course, in the movie, the song rises to its crescendo with the cry of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Halls filled with people stood up to that and shouted along with the hero, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Shastri would have smiled from heavens. Manoj Kumar took the Bharat franchise to a very different plot for Purab or Paschim, or East and West in 1969. That film today, when Bharat, the description Bharat is preferred to India, would be tax exempt immediately and have the Prime Minister, his entire cabinet, almost all chief ministers, even the Sanchalak watching. Unlike Upkar, this was built around cultural nationalism. That is Purab or Paschim. A betrayed and assassinated freedom fighter's son reaches London, and the family friend's daughter he's being set up with, who's Sarah Bano, is so awfully westernized that she smokes, drinks alcohol, wears a blonde wig, has never been to India, and she, her father, or her hippie brother don't even care about India. The NRIs of that generation are portrayed as having only scorn for India, and Bharat got down to fixing it. Manoj Kumar's Bharat got down to fixing it. This included singing at a bar, Zero Jo Diya Mere Bharat Ne. You remember that one? Zero Jo Diya Mere Bharat Ne Mere Bharat Ne. तब दुनिया को गिनती आई, धरती और चांद से की दूरी भी जग को बतलाई भारत ने, etc. etc. I will translate it loosely. When Bharat gifted zero to the world, and this happens after somebody taunts him by saying, so what is India's contribution to the world? It's a big zero. And then he responds by singing, Zero to Diya Mere Bharat Ne. We'll see if we can play one line from it for you.
जब जीरो दिया मेरे भारत ने मेरे भारत ने दुनिया को तब गिनती आई तारों की भाषा भारत ने.
It's because India gave the world zero, he said, and the decimal that the world learned to count. India measured the distance between the earth and the moon. Ultimately, he also straightens Sarah Bano in a way that today will be frightfully misogynistic. He humiliates and harasses her until she becomes a Bhartiya Nari. Once again, some of you might remember, but otherwise check out the song Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, How I Wonder What You Are. That's almost like mocking somebody who's educated in the English medium and irritated when Sarah Bano asks, what do you want? Manoj Kumar responds, I want a chance baby. फिर देख मेरी चाल पे कैसे करेगी तू dance baby. And this goes on like that. This film, Purab or Paschim, had so much power. It was such a hit. It held its own against two super hits announcing the rise of a mega star for generations, Rajesh Khanna, with his two films Aradhana and Do Raste in the same year. Purab or Paschim held its own between those two, and while it ridiculed the NRIs, it ran in London for 50 uninterrupted weeks, a record equaled more than a quarter century later, only a quarter century later by Hum Aapke Hain Kaun in 1994. From the militarized high of the post-1965 years, India's concerns had now evolved into issues of survival, joblessness, hunger, bribery, and corruption. A new Bharat was therefore born in Roti Kapda aur Makan, what we called as RKM for short. It's about a qualified engineer with a degree, but he's too straight to find and hold a job, and he makes a modest living singing for Akashvani along with his girlfriend Zeenat Aman, who dumps him for her boss Shashi Kapoor. Remember that song? मैं ना भूलूंगा, मैं ना भूलूंगी, इन कस्मों को, इन रस्मों को, इन रिश्ते नातों को, that one. But Bharat of Roti Kapda aur Makan fights a good fight, wins and shows us all, especially my generation, which was in its teens then, the way. In between, for Shore, that was a film, Shore as in noise, he prefers the name Shankar to Bharat. The theme is again a victimized but brave poor Indian. Jayapati has a very significant role in that film. There's a labor strike in the film and a good fight against the rich and the capitalists. The film's music is still hummed. एक प्यार का नगमा है, मौजों की रवानी है, जिंदगी और कुछ भी नहीं, तेरी मेरी कहानी है. These were dark, depressing years for India in many ways. Indira Gandhi's socialism on steroids, combined with the post-1973 oil shock to kill jobs, drove us to humiliating ration shops and inflation rate pushing to nearly 30%. I think it got to 28.6% or something. Unemployment was the abiding theme of the times, and while Gulzar had spotted it earlier with his Mere Apne, in which Meena Kumari acted, Manoj Kumar was quick to latch on. The metaphor, Roti Kapda aur Makan, was not Indian, however. It was most likely invented or definitely used most often by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, among the biggest Pakistani feudals, now repackaging himself as more socialist than even Indira Gandhi. The emergency broke Manoj Kumar's momentum. He made a return later with Kranti, etc., but we are not going there. Emergency broke his momentum, but the socio-political conditions his Bharat had battled fueled the rise of the angry young man. And the Bachchan phenomenon was born with Zanjeer, Diwar, Mukaddar Ka Sikandar, Kalia, Kuli, you know all of them. By mid-80s, India took another optimistic turn with Rajiv Gandhi's youthful Mera Bharat Mahan nationalism. In fact, he also had that marathon, I Run for My Nation, where I also put a chest number on my t-shirt and ran the quarter marathon, not a half marathon. Bollywood's patriotism of the 80s came through what was then called parallel cinema, fighting casteism, patriarchy, zamindari, and other injustices, moneylenders. Think Akrosh, Mirch Masala, Ardh Satya, Salim Langde Pe Matro, Albert Pinto Ko Gussa Kyun Aata Hai, and there are many others. Hard nationalism returned through Tamil cinema with Roja in 1992. This was the fictionalized and dramatized story of an Indian Oil senior executive, K. Doraiswamy, who was kidnapped by Kashmiri terrorists. They wanted the release of some jailed fellow terrorists. The much younger filmy character played by Arvind Swamy became a national name. The film was dubbed in Hindi and was a mega hit in both languages. Roja lifted two restraints on Bollywood. First, the Muslim no longer had to be the good guy, sacrifice his life for the hero, his best friend. He was now the terrorist. The era of Pran playing, singing Yari Hai Man Mera Yaar Meri Zindagi, that era was now over. The Muslim was now the terrorist, unfortunately. The new nationalism was war on Pakistan. I watched Roja first in Tamil in a cheering Madras cinema hall with Vasanthi, the editor of our Tamil edition, India Today's Tamil edition, where I worked. And I told her that Tollywood had just launched a huge new national trend. The success of Roja in Tamil showed that anger with Pakistan was no longer merely a northern phenomenon. That was the stereotype that had prevailed for a very long time. The origin of Roja in the south and its success there destroyed that stereotype. That new post-1992 or the post-Roja theme endured through the following decades and prospers even now. Check out the latest Skyforce, a Bollywoodized account of a 1965 IAF fighter pilot's inadequately celebrated heroism. You want to know more about it? Please Google Squadron Leader A.B. Devaya. He was a Mysteer pilot. Mysteers are not supposed to fight dogfights. He had gone on an air raid over heavily defended Sargodha. He was chased by a much superior F-104 Star fighter. In the melee, while he was hit by the starfighter pilot. He also got behind the starfighter pilot and shot him down. This is a story that came out much, much later, and he was awarded a Mahavir Chakra more than 2 decades later. That's why his story is not really celebrated as much as it should have been. This movie, Sky Force, celebrates that, but again, it's a Bollywoodized version, but that is what you would expect. What was Top Gun after all? In between, however, in between these periods, we had the Sunny Deol era when the terrorist usually woke to the call of azan from the nearby mosque. You made the correction. The Muslim was not supposed to be the bad person. And generally, the bad guys, all Muslims, haven't had a respite since. Kargil War sparked its own genre of ridiculous, infantile war films topped by that pre-election Udi, the surgical strike, which was so infantile and so popular. Of course, the biggest trigger of all was Sunny Deol's Border 1997. What will Manoj Kumar's Bharat do today? In Upkar, he also spoke about the evils of war. In fact, in Upkar, there is a song, ये कैसी रात है कैसी, and if you hear the words, ये कैसी रात है कैसी, ये बढ़ती जा रही है बात कैसी, and this takes you to the battlefield where somebody is burning to death, where there's a lot of destruction, where bombs are falling, and listen to the poets, the lyricists' words there. ये कैसी रात है कैसी, ये बढ़ती जा रही है बात कैसी, and then it goes on to say, राखी उजड़ी सिंदूर जले, सोया है कोई शोलों के तले, लोग कैसे जला कोई जिंदा है मौत भी जिससे शर्मिंदा, धरती अर्थी बन जाती है जब जब बारूद उगलती है, चलती है किसी माँ के दिल पर सीमा पे जो गोली चलती है. So what is the song telling you? It says that war causes destruction. You see somebody is burning to death. You see somebody lying under burning embers. War burns lots of sisters Rakhis. War makes many women widows. Rakhi ujdi sindoor jale. And any bullets that's fired on the border ultimately hits a mother's heart. And that is why the message is war is a bad thing. A war is an evil thing. Now, today's Bharat, if Bharat came back today, he will have to win the war and then pour scorn on the dead enemy, on the bodies of the dead enemy. Because the enemy is an idiot, a fool, and his Bharat has now risen. It is Viksit after all.